Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Hi everybody, we are now on episode 8 of the story behind Don't Die For Me, Argentina. And I had originally planned for episode 7 and episode 8 to be about two things that happened when I was there, but I didn't. Last week was completely taken up with Broken Glass Mountain, which is rightly so, because it was a massive impact for me still now. But the other thing was, at one point we'd been riding along and suddenly there was 4 of us on our own and we'd lost everybody else. And that was quite a scary moment too. And this is what I mentioned last week, is when I did learn to trust Fudge. But I'm not going to repeat what was in the book, because I used that in the book too. Because although I had no fears that we would find the others or they would find us and we would be safe again, and it wasn't that far, as I say, I took that moment, that experience, and just add in bits that make it much more dangerous, much more of an issue, and so that you can, that's the whole point. All of these things have happened to me, or I have been part of, or I've experienced, and just in case you're wondering, because you might think, oh, that's so sad that then she takes wonderful experiences and twists them and makes them dangerous and evil or whatever. And doesn't that taint my memories? No, not at all, because at the end of the day, this is fiction. It is very much fiction. It's just to be able to explain and give you that feeling. I take those real feelings, those real experiences, those real situations, and then do, as I say, blow them up, make them more sinister than they were in real life. I mean, in some cases, in real life, they have none of those feelings associated with them at all. But they just do in the book. So, but that's what I think makes my writing more real, is that they are coming from a place that I have genuinely been and experienced that situation. So we did get lost for a moment, and I used that for this part of the book, and this was when I learnt to trust Fudge, which if you listen to last week's you'll understand that. So let me read you the extract, as it's very, very similar to what really happened, just there may be more drama in the book than there was in our reality. Penny was now second, Elizabeth behind, and Anique bringing up the rear. After 5 minutes, Elizabeth called out, "Are we sure we are going the right way? Can you see them ahead? Because I cannot." Elizabeth is French, and Anique is from the Netherlands. So then they speak in the full English, because I wanted to get across that it wasn't their first language. And often people who speak English very, very, very well don't do the shortening, like don't, they do not, or did not. In this case, can't, they might say cannot. And so anybody who English wasn't their first language, I tried to write them like that, their speech, so that you got that it wasn't their first language. But then when Penny or anybody who was English speaking spoke, you totally could see that. Are we sure we are going the right way? Can you see them ahead? Because I cannot. Thomas stopped again, this time remaining parallel with the path. Penny and Fudge stepped up beside him. There was a line of trees whose tops reached maybe 5 feet up from the path they were on, so they couldn't see anything on the other side of the trees. Slightly down from where the path ran, they could see up the side of the mountain, still immediately to their right, but they couldn't see ahead. The path just seemed to go on, but there was nobody ahead. For as far as they could see, on the winding path along the side of the mountain. "Where did they go?" asked Penny. "I do not know," shrugged Thomas. He's German. "They must still be up ahead. There is nowhere they could have left this path. I suggest we keep going round these turns and bends. We will see them ahead soon." Elizabeth was still shedding tears and had not quite got over the perilous climb. She whimpered, "But what happens if they did turn off? There was a bit back there, a fork in the road. They could have taken the bit that went down, and then they would be the other side of these trees." "I did not see that. I think they are up ahead. Let us just keep going this way, and we should see them soon," insisted Thomas. They moved forward along the path again, filtering down into single file, as Fudge threw his head in the air and neighed loudly. Penny laughed, leaning forward, rubbing his neck. "What is it, boy? Are you calling ahead to tell your friends we're coming?" She couldn't get over how much more comfortable she now felt back on the flat. The sound had faded, the tension released, and having dropped back, the 4 of them didn't feel like they were racing. This was much more what they had intended, what they'd thought this journey would be about, riding and admiring the open vastness of Patagonia. A few more steps further along, and they rounded a rock with bushes that enabled them to see the path for a good distance ahead. There was nobody ahead of them. The rest of the group had completely disappeared. Fudge halted. Tango, Anique's horse, didn't. He continued on, cutting in front of Sombre. The gap was too tight. Anique's foot caught the back of Fudge's rump. Fudge moved his backside round, backing into Tango, pushing him towards the edge of the cliff and the trees. Sombre got caught on the side and stumbled up the side of the mountain, still above them, to go ahead in front of Fudge's head. Fudge dropped his head and reared up, twisting around and trotting off the way they'd come. Penny pulled him up and tried to turn him back. He threw his head around and reared again. Penny was ready for him this time. She pushed him forward and kept her hands straight so he couldn't twist round. He let out a long neigh. The horses were agitated. "What is wrong with them?" asked Elizabeth. "I am scared. Where are the others? What spooked them?" Penny struggled to keep Fudge facing their direction of travel. She asked him to move forward and continue in that direction, but she was met with complete resistance. He reared up, shook his head as if trying to throw her off her hands, and fought the bit. He stretched his nose down to the ground, then flung it up again, yanking on her hands each time. He wasn't a happy horse. Thomas, who'd taken control a few moments ago, now looked lost himself. He didn't know what to do or where to go, and that tension clearly passed through to Fiyero. He, like a flickering fire, started prancing on the spot, agitated and eager to move. Tango joined in, shoving through and dancing all around all of them as Anik tried to control him. He seemed to have no spatial awareness and barged his saddlebags and her legs into the shoulders or rumps of the other horses as he pranced around. Sombre stayed nervous. He avoided the edge and moved out of the way, timid and following, not acting of his own decision. Penny was struggling with Fudge. He was the most stressed of all of them, and the one being vocal. A little bit later. "I think we should head back the way we came. If that eases their tension, then we know we passed where we should have turned off." He motioned that they should all turn round and start walking back the other way. This is Thomas. "And what if it does not sort them out?" said Neek through gritted teeth as she tried to halt Tango for just one moment. All the horses continued to strain and throw their heads about, snort and stamp their feet, an equine tantrum. Penny swung her hands out as Fudge stood on his back legs and started marching back the way they'd come. She spoke over her left shoulder. "I think we have to try it. Come on." As they rode back, Fudge settled. Penny stroked his neck. "You scared me, boy." Fudge tossed his head and snorted the air out of his nostrils. Penny felt he was responding that way, that he was scared too, but they were back on the right track, so it was fine. Penny looked out ahead over the trees below. If she didn't know there were 7 other riders out here somewhere, she could easily believe it was only the 4 of them. With not truly knowing the horses or where they were going, any help being miles away, and unable to get them to them quickly, a little shiver went down her spine. So that is all genuinely what happened. And it was Fudge who was neighing to whoever, and he was rearing up and he kept trying to spin round and head that way, and he was proper tossing his head around and getting really, really quite anxious. But as soon as we turned around and started walking back, he calmed right down. Having just done the ride up Broken Glass Mountain, and then him starting to get all agitated like that, that was that day, that ride, I really was rather nervous. It did scare me a bit, but it's also, you may wonder why I set a thriller on out in Patagonia on horseback. It would have been just as good on foot, just as isolating, just as hard for people to get to you, etc. But the horses add, apart from the fact I did it on horseback, so story behind my stories, and I use that in the book. I could have done it without the horses, but the horses add that extra dimension purely because they are living animals. It's not like riding a motorbike or a push bike or walking on your own 2 feet. You are, I'm going to use the word stuck on a horse that has a mind of its own, and you have to go with it at times. And that just adds that extra dimension to the whole thing, that you are at the mercy of your horse, and particularly going up Broken Glass Mountain. And now, we were 40,000 hectares or something or another amount of land they owned that we rode, and even the horses couldn't know everywhere. And like I said at the very start, they weren't like, say, riding school ponies or trekking ponies, where they know the route. It's the same route every time, and they go out and they do it day in, day out. These horses didn't, and it wasn't the same route, and it depended on how far you'd got in a day and where the best places to camp were. And although we were aiming for a certain place, it wasn't that set in stone. So when we got into that situation where we didn't know where we were and we couldn't see the others, in one sense we had to rely on the horses for them to know. But knowing that they weren't like following the trail that they always followed and whatever, it was also quite hard really to trust them that they knew. But I think for me, Fudge calling to the others was a big thing that made me believe him, if you like. So I continue reading what happened then. I am cutting bits out because there's other bits of the story, the bits that, like I say, make it more their story than mine, and enhances the atmosphere. Here, this is the path I remember I think we should take, said Elizabeth as they reached a gap between the trees. The four of them gathered at the fork. Are you sure? Asked Penny. It doesn't look much of a path to me. There you are, Gina's voice came from behind them. Fudge let out another neigh, stomping forward towards Shikaro, as Penny said, Am I glad to see you? Thanks for coming to find us. Right, now I have found you, we need to go. We have to catch up with the others. Let us go. She spun Shikaro round and started heading back down the way she'd come. They'd all turned to face the path when they'd first heard her voice, so they filtered into single file. Sombre and Elizabeth behind Shikaro, then Penny on Fudge, followed by Anique on Tango. Fudge was eager to get going, putting on his bit, throwing his head in the air. Penny tensed slightly, reining him back in. Fudge was having none of it. He threw his head in the air and reared, all his weight on his hind legs. With the loose sand and soil, they started to slide down the path. Penny desperately pulled Fudge to one side, so when he dropped to his four hooves, it was on the same level, but 3 feet below. As his hooves hit the ground, he bounced straight back up again. Only now, Penny wasn't higher up the hill, with earth beneath her to fall on, but on the edge of the path, out in mid-air, hanging over the side of the drop. She panicked and pushed him forward with her legs. His forelegs tapped down and back up again, as Gina swung round, grabbed one of his reins, holding his head down so he couldn't rear. Penny panicked. She was in tears, terrified she would fall off, terrified of the fall down the mountainside, terrified Fudge's back legs would slip, falling on top of her. Relax, "Relax," said Gina firmly, as she kept Fudge's head low, her elbow in his neck, her grip tight beneath his jaw. "Trust Fudge. He will get you there." It wasn't just the conviction in her voice. It wasn't just her repeating what Andreas had told her twice before. It was something in Penny's reptilian brain, her amygdala, the part in control when fear took over, that switched something for her and Fudge. Penny dropped her hands, relaxed her seat, loosened her grip with her calves. As she did so, Fudge lowered his head, stopped popping up and down with his front legs, and steadied his body. Gina released his reins, rubbed between his ears, stepping away, allowing Fudge to pass. Fudge, calmly and precisely, placed each hoof one in front of the other and made his way down the path. Penny let him choose the route. In doing so, a bond of trust ignited between them. Penny realised that if she trusted Fudge, he would keep her safe. Exactly as Andreas had told her. And that was exactly the moment. For Penny, for me. When he started rearing up on that downward slope, there was all just sand. There was none of the slate and stuff. It was all just sand, but it was still slippy. And I did exactly that. I turned him so he was horizontal. So he was across the path. But he just reared straight up and there's just sheer drop. And I'm hanging over the drop and I'm like... So I push him on. But every time his front legs came down, he'd go back up again. And it wasn't Gina for me. It was Steen. And she just said again, trust him. Just trust him. And like I said, it was literally like a switch. He neighed. He knew they were missing. He was calling to the others. He'd got me up Broken Glass Mountain. And then he'd got me down this path. And so then from that moment, I completely trusted Fudge. And so when we came to the other Broken Glass Mountain and had to go up, which is the combination of the two that I used in the book, I was then in complete trust. And although it still terrified me, and I still had all those thoughts, I didn't try and get Fudge walk that way because I can see actual ground. I let him choose, and every time he chose right. So that was exactly that experience, which I just thought, yeah, let's put it in the book, but make it all the bits I took out. You need to read the book to find out what else happened when they were lost. But that's it for today. So that's episode 8 done, and so we've only got one more episode. And so I will catch you next week with the season finale of the story behind Don't Die For Me, Argentina. And the other bits I planned maybe to tell you about will go into the book. The book of the story behind Don't Die For Me, Argentina. New series of all the story behinds. Much expanded. The podcast just gives you a little taster. The books give you a lot more detail and a lot more information. And lots and lots of pictures. So the first one, the story behind Tie-Dye, is out on the 20th of June 2026. So and that's titled Tie-Dye: How a Year in Thailand Turned into a Thriller Novel. So go and pre-order that. and give that a read if you're loving the podcast. And I will catch you next week, for the last week, the season finale. Take care. Bye.